Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Maurice Velasquez, and I have here in the studio Tim Mckey, with the McKey Business Group CPA. Can you introduce Rebekah for me? And introduce.
This is Rebekah Summerville, is a CPA here in the office with me, and kind of runs. Truth be known, she kind of runs the show here. So,
yeah, it's pretty much in my team. I have other people that run and tell me what to do. I'm just not good at listening, So, all right. So thank you very much, Tim. Thank you very much, Rebekah, for doing this. What's driving a lot of this is the numerous questions that we all have about the loans and what's out there, and the fact that things change so quickly. I mean, just the two of you and myself, we posted something on Wednesday, and sure enough, that night things changed. And so it just generates a lot of questions. So I'm getting a lot of questions from my clients. I'm getting a lot of questions from my friends, my colleagues, my families, and I've been telling them, hold on, I'm not the guy, but I know somebody, and I've been telling them all about y'all. And so the email that I got from y'all was so timely, and that's why we got together about, okay, let's go ahead and do a webinar and see what we can help. Give people direction, and just be honest that, right, what we don't know, and what's opinion's opinion, and because things keep changing so much, we just may not have all the answers right now. Is that a good way to put it, Tim?
That's a very good way to put it. Right now, we know a lot, but we don't have a lot of detail, and that's what's frustrating, really, for us, sometimes for our clients, and sometimes for the financial institutions that are going to be administering these loans, along with the Small Business Administration. But I want to back up a little bit for just a second before we start talking about just the loan information. Can
I interrupt you for 1 second, sure. Tim? Let me go ahead and greet all the attendees. Thank you all for joining us. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. Use the chat panel. So click at the bottom of your Zoom screen where it says chat, and type in your question there. I'll be looking for it as Tim and Rebekah talk, and I'll collect those. However, if it's too long or you feel it's more convenient that you want to ask the question, go ahead and click where it says at the bottom, raise hand, and that'll indicate to me that you want to raise your hand, and I'll open up the mic for you, and so I'll try to keep a little bit of control there so it just doesn't go all over the place. It's not an open mic. But what I'd like to do is give and ask Tim and Rebekah to give us a good introduction and a good segment of explaining things to us, because you already have a lot of questions that you're going to ask us. So you're going to spend quite a good bit of time going question by question. So I'm going to let you guys talk for a good bit, and then I'll open it up for questions. Is that okay, Tim?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. All right. Well, having said that, again, everybody, thank you for joining us. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, what we wanted to cover a little bit on today was on the CARES Act itself, which is CARES is an acronym, and I'm looking at it, so I'll make sure I get it right. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Stimulus Act, or CARES Act. And within that act that was passed last Friday, I think President Trump actually signed it. And since that time, Rebekah and I have been pretty much knee-deep in trying to understand what's in that package so we can advise our individual and business clients. So there's actually a lot of components to that act, but from an individual standpoint, I'm sure most people have probably heard if your income was under such and such an amount, you would get a check. If you were furloughed from your work, there are extended unemployment benefits. I'm not going to go, or we're not going to go into a lot of detail about those things today. And what we're going to try to concentrate on are the business aspects of what our business clients could potentially take advantage of, and what the government is offering us through this act. So I'll try to hit at kind of a high level on what's out there, and drill down to as much detail as I say I'll know. As we alluded to earlier here, there's a lot of fuzziness in the details. Would you say so, Rebekah?
I would say a lot.
A lot of fuzziness and questions that we have, and we will tell you, look, we're unsure about this, but we'll also say this is our opinion of where we think this may go. So I hit a couple of things that are business related, that are a little bit, I'll say, further down the road. There's going to be some tax credits for payroll. There is possibly some deferment of payroll taxes. The employer portion of payroll taxes that you have to pay. I would say if any of you listening today are business owners and you're not utilizing a third-party payroll service, such as, and I'll throw out some names, there's Paychex, there's ADP, HR Solutions here in Baton Rouge. There are others, and we're not trying to direct you to any one in particular, but the payroll down the road based on what needs to be tracked is probably going to be fairly complicated. And there may even be some risk that you're assuming by doing your own payroll. So I'd advise you to at least look into using one of those services down the road.
Okay. And hey, Gus, I don't want to distract you, but if you see me moving around typing, I'm collecting questions and of that sort. So I'm trying not to distract you guys much.
Cool.
Okay?
No big deal. You want to talk about EDIL, Rebekah, first and lay that out, and then we'll go from there?
I think so. The first one that was available, the form is available and you apply directly on the SBA website, is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL for short. The very short form. Is our understanding that you can be eligible to receive up to a $10,000 grant right away that is not going to be repaid. And from the application says that once you apply, you can expect the funds within 72 hours. We haven't seen that yet. We have done a couple of applications and are waiting to see how that shakes out, but the form is very easy. It's very minimal business information. It's your gross revenues for a 12-month period that they specify, and then cost of goods and expenses for the same period.
And I want to jump in and say that the EIDL loan was a loan that was actually available that did not come about due to the CARES Act. It was actually already out there as a loan you could apply for. The $10,000 grant wasn't a part of it. They amended that through the CARES Act, but or immediately before the CARES Act. That particular loan is not the forgivable loan that most people are hearing about in the news and elsewhere. That doesn't mean that you should not apply for that loan. As Rebekah said, it's a very, very simple application process. You can go directly to SBA.gov and get there to the application itself and do it yourself if you have the information. Again, you may need to talk to your accountant or CPA to help you with that. If so, please do. But it's something that is done directly from the SBA site. I want to contrast that. That's loan number one. Contrast that with the Paycheck Protection Program loan, and we'll call it the PPP loan.
PPP, right? Okay.
Yeah, and you're probably hearing that and seeing that on the news, et cetera. That particular loan is one that has the possibility of being forgiven. It's a little bit more lengthy application process, and quite honestly, we've been pretty frustrated with the applications that have come out. And what I mean by that, they've come out and said, here's the application, then, oh no, that's not the right one. Here's a sample of one that's coming out tomorrow. And oh, here's what we think is the final one. So it's really confused. I won't say a lot of professionals, but at least two that are sitting in front of this camera have been kind of confused about how to go about doing this.
So let me ask you a little bit about, can you
Sure.
dive a little bit into what portions are forgivable and what rates and what are the parameters for that?
Yeah, the payroll protection loan is is set up to be on a 2-year repayment at a 0.5% interest rate. However, we can get into the forgiveness side. If you apply and get that loan, which by the way is computed as 2.5 months of your last year's average payroll, and I'm going to say that's in general because there's some adjustments that have to be made to that. But if you get that money from a loan, from the PPP loan, and utilize it for the purposes that the government has set up, most of which is payroll. What they're trying to do is keep you paying your people and keeping them employed. So if you utilize that money that way, now you can use it for other things. 75% of it at least needs to be used on payroll. Then there are some calculations that you go through that if you maintain the same payroll, headcount, and expenses, then over 8 weeks after the loan is funded, that portion of the loan can be forgiven. And I know I've just said a mouthful, and that's a lot of information.
So what they're trying to do is not only fund for you to pay people's payroll, but for you to retain those employees a longer period of time.
That is correct.
Right.
That's the incentive. That's the incentive behind that.
When this is all over, they want you to be able to operate at full speed without having to ramp back up.
Correct.
Right. Now we have had or know of some clients and some businesses that have let employees go because their business took a downturn. There are some an immediate downturn. There are some exceptions to the rule. You can bring them back, is what I'm trying to say, and stumbling over my words. The words that we want to say instead of let go or fired the employee is you have furloughed them. And if you bring them back and you utilize this money from the loan to pay them, even though you might not actually need them functioning in your business, that's still okay. And you can still get forgiveness of that loan. And if you think about it, it's kind of the no skin off my nose deal. If you get the money and you're paying someone and it's going to be forgiven. But there are lots of, or I'll say some tracking things that you must do. I'll also say that I didn't say earlier, as opposed to the EDIL loan, the PPP loan is going to be backed by SBA, but you need to go through an SBA lender to actually get that loan, a financial institution that does SBA lending. Most of them do. Or lots, I'll just say this, lots of lenders do that, but you have to go through them, apply through them. I believe, Rebekah, that the final application, or at least the most recent application, came out at noon, or maybe earlier this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let me ask a question that I've been asked a lot, and I can already tell somebody online is kind of alluding to this. Is payroll is for employees? Does that also include like payroll for myself? I'm an employee. Am I included? Is my wife included, who's also an employee of the business?
It's included up to $100,000 of payroll. That's my per person, whether it's the owner or not.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the answer is you are included. Now we can have a whole different conversation. We're assuming that what we're talking about now is a business that is some type of business entity, such as a corporation, a regular corporation, an S corporation, a partnership.
Correct.
Something like that. There's specific rules too for sole proprietors. From the tax nerd CPA angle, sole proprietor means you report your taxes on your personal tax return. You don't file a separate entity return. So there's certain things there that the CARES Act is attempting to cover also. You just check a different box on the application, provide a little bit different information. So I hope I'm answering that question.
Yeah, I think so. Can you touch a little bit of some more? Somebody just asked a question about, can you expound just a little bit more on any other additional differences for sole proprietorships?
Actually, I'm not sure if there is much difference at all, because they're going to be looking at profitability as opposed to just payroll with sole proprietorships, because a sole proprietor doesn't generally pay himself a W-2 wage.
Right.
So the nuances, and I'm being a little slippery here, because the nuances are going to be in the application. They're going to ask you a little bit different question if you're a sole proprietor.
Got it. And it's my understanding that small businesses and independent contractors and self-employed, they submit their application next Friday, right?
They can submit the application as soon as they have their information available.
Okay, but it's not open today. So, for example,
okay, well, this is that because the PPP is being administered through individual financial institutions. I've gotten notices from some financial institutions today that they are accepting them today. And I've gotten at least 2 that say we don't think that we're going to have our ducks in a row, meaning that the financial institutions procedures in place until early next week.
Got it.
Which again brings up another point here, is that in the CARES Act, I think it was $349 billion that was set aside for this. And that's obviously a whole lot of money, but it may not cover the amount of money of the persons that are going to be applying for it. So, which our advice is apply sooner than later.
Yeah.
Use the absolute best information that you can to apply. Obviously, we would never advise willy-nilly putting anything on a form, but get applied. With your financial institution. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you a question. Somebody's asking this. I'm sorry, Rebekah, go ahead.
Well, I think your best line of contact for what form is available and what your bank is doing is to contact your personal banker, because every form is going to be personalized for that bank.
Right. The overall SBA application will be the same, but what the bank wants behind it may be very different. It's going to vary. But again, it's going to be similar, but it's going to vary some.
Got it. Okay. Somebody asked, Tim, my question is about the 8-week period to use the PPP. My business has a government contract and is currently mandated to be closed. As I understand it, the 8 weeks starts immediately upon approval. I won't have payroll until the government allows us to reopen. Is that correct? That the 8 weeks starts upon loan approval, not when our business reopens?
Oh, we wonder the same thing.
I will wonder the same thing. I really wish I could give you good advice on that. If you're mandated to be closed, how can you bring your people back? But if you think this through a little bit, you may not be someone who wants to apply for that loan, because it's not money that you're going to keep per se, because you're borrowing it and giving it to someone.
You
don't have to give it to someone. They're not just going to give you the money and you can keep it.
Well, if you keep it, are you saying I can keep it, I can use it, or are you saying can't keep it and be forgivable?
You can't. It won't be forgivable.
Right. The point but you can use it for something else. If you take the loan and you use it for anything else on the payroll, you just have to be aware that's not
my understanding, that you could use it if you're not using it on the payroll within that 8-week period. Correct. From the time it's delivered, then it's not forgivable. So I highly encourage everyone to go to the SBA site and read these things. Obviously, they're trying to go into every little bit of detail here is somewhat, we need a 3-day webinar.
Yeah, no, and I know that a lot of the attendees are asking for specifics. So I mean, we could look at 30 different scenarios and spend all day here. So let me just ask one more, because there isn't 30 questions. So just what about for a business like you only have 1 or 2 owners and that's all they have? It's a small business. Likewise, they would be in a situation that it would cover for their payroll, and that portion would be forgivable.
Absolutely. It covers the owners in the act, in the loan itself. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
I'll go back to the previous question. One more thing about the business is closed. I think it's my interpretation, if I look at the spirit of the way the act was intended, was to keep people getting a paycheck and employed during the crisis. Whether you're open or closed really isn't relevant, because the assumption is that you get the loan proceeds, keep your people on the payroll and keep everybody whole so that in hopefully 8 weeks, we're all back to normal. Business operations will start covering payroll.
I agree. The trick that, or the thing that stumped me, quite honestly, in the last one was that the government is mandated that they be closed.
Right.
That's different than a restaurant that's not mandated to be closed, but is saying no sit down. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
If you're closed, that brings up a very interesting and unique situation, in my opinion.
But we don't have any specific guidance on that at all.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and just mention to the attendees, if any of you want the mic, you want to ask a question, Tim or Rebekah, please feel to raise your hand. I'll open up the mic. If any of you have additional questions, you notice that all the questions that have been put on the chat or in the private question answer session have been answered. So appreciate all of you attendees who are participating in there.
And I'll say they have been answered as best they can be.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so all right. So again, for those of you that just barely joined in, this feels like a radio show, guys. For those of you that just joined in the show, this is Tim Mckey and Rebekah Summerville from McKey Business Group CPA. You guys are located here in Baton Rouge. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so going in any other area that you want to go, I feel like I interrupted you with asking you specific questions. Any other questions you want to tackle or any other issues that you had on your list or your agenda? You know?
Actually, we've covered a whole lot. We're falling on the side of applying for both of these loans. The EIDL loan, which if you remember was the one that was actually there prior to the CARES Act. If you actually get that loan before the PPP loan is funded, you can refinance that EIDL loan with the PPP money.
Got it.
There is some confusion there and some debate, if you will, right now, that whether or not if you get the EIDL money and you refinance it with the PPP money, remember the EIDL was not forgivable, but PPP is. Did you just take the non-forgivable money to the forgivable? We read it as we think that is in fact the case, but I couldn't swear 100% that that's how that's going to be treated. So that's something that we've got to get clear. Once we get the first application to the financial institution, we've got to go through that and talk to them about that. Quite honestly, I just don't know right now.
Okay. What about this whole issue of double dipping? Okay. I use one instrument which has a forgivable element to it, but if I do certain things with the other instrument, it triggers the forgivable elements of the previous one unforgivable. Or you know what I'm saying? Can you speak to that? Because in almost every webinar that I've attended, they've talked about it. It seems to be a confusion on this.
There is a little bit of confusion, but the EIDL money is supposed to be used for expenses that you otherwise would not have had, or for bills you could not pay because of the event. That is not what the PPP loan is for. It's for really for payroll, trying to keep people employed. You can use it for rent and mortgage payment, and I think there's maybe even utility. I can't remember what the other was. It utilities, interest in utilities. Yeah, there's some specific things there. What if you were to use the EIDL money for, let's say, payroll for this upcoming next week? And I know we're not going to get the money that fast, but for that particular week.
Well, that is actually one of the questions. What you know? Go ahead.
Yeah, you can't use the PPP money for the exact same week. That doesn't make any sense. So you can't double dip that way and say, hey, I'm going to use money and say I'm using it for this week. It doesn't work that way. But again, if you're spending it for payroll over a period of time, you know, and you're able to get money from EIDL and PPP, and assuming that if you refinance with the PPP money, I'm thinking it's all going to be forgivable, assuming you spend it the right way.
And is it only payroll that's forgivable, or other elements like rent, or what other elements have a forgivable element to it?
Mortgage payments and
I'm sorry. I think I spoke over you, Rebekah. Which ones?
Rent, interest on mortgage payments, and utilities.
Okay. I mean, that covers a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really a very interesting thing that's going on. It's kind of unprecedented. That's why I think there's so much confusion. And I feel like we're not answering a lot of the questions. What we're trying to
I
do is
know.
let you guys know, the participants know what's out there. And you've got to dig into it deeper at your individual level. We've been doing that with our CPA clients today. How is this going to fit for this person, and this one? And it's all individual. So,
All right. So, talk to me about nonprofit organizations, faith-based groups, churches. Does this apply to them? Large
yes,
churches,
it does. This is actually the latest application. And across the top here are boxes, sole proprietor, partnership, C corporation, S corporation, 501c3 organization. That is generally a charitable, not-for-profit organization. The computations are the same, and it appears that the treatment is actually the same.
So everything you've said up to this point applies to any of those not faith-based churches, nonprofits, 501c3. Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it. All right. So somebody asked, and if they missed it, because the question is along the lines of really $10,000. I mean, are they just giving money? I mean, can you either re-explain, expound what? I mean, first of all, explain it as best as you can. Second, are there any strings attached? And then you get into the whole issue: is this a bailout? What's the liability that?
I can tell you the way I understand it.
To?
I can tell you the way I understand it and what what I suspect.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, that $10,000 advance is on that first loan we talked about, the EIDL loan.
Correct.
Which was in place prior to the CARES Act that came out. The $10,000 advance on that was because of the COVID-19 situation. What I think the government is trying to do is say, apply for this loan, give us this information, and we're going to send you $10,000 in the short run, okay? Because there's going to have to be a lot more analysis by the SBA for the EIDL loan, and there's going to be some detailed analysis by the financial institutions on the PPP loan. I think the intention is to get a lot of people $10,000.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And will it really be a grant? Quite honestly, I think it will, because they're trying to get money on the street. Now, when I say on the street, to the businesses,
into the economy,
in the short run.
Right, into the economy.
And as you can imagine, though, $10,000 with a fairly large business is a small amount of money. It's a lot of money for one person at one time. But if you spread that over a payroll of 15, 20 people, all of a sudden it's not a lot of money per person.
Sure.
But I do believe that the government is trying to get that money in the business's hands as a show of good faith, that they're trying to make an effort toward this.
Right.
It's interesting, though. I think it will be forgiven if you apply for that money, the EIDL. You get $10,000, and then for some reason you're turned down from the loan. I read the regulations as saying you still don't have to repay that $10,000.
Really?
That's staggering. It doesn't seem right, but that's what it says.
Wow. Okay. What other questions do you guys want to address that I've stepped over, or that I've pulled you in a different direction? Anything else that you guys can think of?
One other thing on the EIDL loan is when you apply for it, you do not ask for a specific amount. There's no calculation for the loan amount like the Paycheck Protection Program. SBA is going to look at your information and determine based on the economic impact to your business, how much of a working capital loan they're going to offer you.
Okay. And that's what makes us think, Maurice, that they're going to put this $10,000 out, and it's not going to be immediate. I know that everyone's trying to get applied for on both of these loans, but there's going to be some analysis. There's going to be some slowdown. And as you can imagine, Baton Rouge is being a microcosm. I know my professional friends that are CPAs, they're all doing the same thing with their clients. And there's going to be a barrage of applications. And SBA, quite honestly, is going to be very short of manpower. It's going to take a while. So I hope we can all be a little bit patient.
Is it a first come first served basis? Is the urgency the fact that get it in there now? Don't if you're going to do it, if you're on the fence, get off the fence, right?
Well, that's a very good point. Yes, we understand it being first come first served, which and this is I'm going to throw out some crazy numbers. $349 billion that was set aside for the Paycheck Protection Program. Again, sounds like a lot of money, but if every business in this country is applying for that, it's probably going to run out. What are they going to do if people have applied and just didn't get it and say, hey, you're just a day late and $1 short? I don't know what they're going to do. It's total speculation at that point. I have heard, in just interviews with the Mnuchin and Trump and some of the people in the financial side of this, that there may be a phase 2 and phase 3 funding on this. Do I want to depend on that?
Right.
Probably not. So the answer is, if you think you need to apply, apply. Okay.
Let's dive into that. When do we apply? What's today? I heard that something got pushed back till next week, or what was supposed to happen today got pushed back?
Your local banker for. You need to contact your local banker and see if they're accepting the applications.
Are some? I think there's some bank institutions that are opting out to not doing this. Is that correct?
I haven't gotten any evidence of that. They have to be a SBA approved lender to put the money, to loan the money. And remember, SBA is simply backing the loan.
Sure. Okay. One of our attendees said, and again, I'm just going to go off of what they just posted, that their bank does not and will not be handling the PPP.
I would propose finding a bank that go to another bank that does. I mean, okay. That's all I can say. We're not going to.
I know what your answer is going to be, but this was the question. Any recommendations of banking institutions, or what you would say? What would you say?
That's a tough.
That's a tough one. No, I know Chase is doing. I know Iberia is doing, and I know some credit unions are doing it. I am not going to, again, Capital One. We can name probably 10.
Hey, man, and they didn't pay sponsorships for this, so we can't really make a recommendation.
I wasn't even going there, but yeah. My advice would be, for the person who asked that, if you have a relationship in a larger institution, just know someone, go to them, or if you have a business associate, ask them who they use and try to use that relationship, because that's going to mean a lot.
Last week, you told me, Maurice, get with your banking relationship and talk with them. I picked up the phone and they were ready to talk to me. So that's what I'm hearing you say. Pick up the phone and call your bank and let them know you're interested, and they'll have somebody, or they'll at least put you in a queue or some kind of waiting to get with you. Is that correct?
Amen. Yes.
All right. So the application process, you guys are there to help us for anybody who wants to apply. But I also, in your email that you sent out, you also alluded to the fact that there's a tracking mechanism, the paperwork that is associated with this, to make sure that you're reporting and you're submitting of whatever paperwork is required so you can get the forgivableness triggered.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. As we said before, for the loan to be forgiven, it has to be utilized on certain areas, mainly payroll, at least 75% payroll. So what we're actually advising is a fairly simple approach. If you are receiving funds from either of these two loans, we're advising put it in a totally separate bank account and transfer that money out to utilize on certain on the things that are acceptable, if you will.
And are you saying that primarily for easier tracking?
Correct.
Kind of like you have an account where you're borrowing from, so you can track the transfer and the usage of it a lot easier.
We're tracking the money going in. It comes from these loans. We track it out, and we're paying this on payroll for this date, this for rent, or this for whatever. We want a very clear tracking mechanism, because we think there needs to be what we call an audit trail of how did you spend that money. The bank is going to need to know that so they can then say this amount is forgivable. So there's some paperwork behind it or tracking that's going to have to be done.
Okay. So how else are you guys helping? By the way, let me tell the attendees, I think we're soon going to be wrapping it up. So if you have any more questions, now's a good time to ask them, post them. If you want the microphone with Tim, raise your hand, click on raise your hand. I'll give you the microphone so you can interact with Tim and Rebekah. But I think we're in the last lap here. So I don't want to cut you guys off short either. I just want to kind of just keep us timely. How else are you guys helping in this process? How can you guys help us through this as far as the application?
We're helping the clients that we have now, helping them do some of the computations on their payroll. So because remember what the amount you can get with the paycheck protection program is 2.5 times the payroll cost over the last. Let me back up. It's 2.5 months of the average payroll for the last year. But there are some things within that cause some complication. I mean, it includes your health insurance. It includes retirement plan, but payroll taxes. But it maxes out at $100,000. So if you've got an employee that you're paying $150,000, you don't take that 150 out. You only take 50 out. So we're helping our clients go through their payrolls, seeing what qualifies as payroll and helping them compute the amount and then set up tracking systems to when it comes in, how they're going to handle it. Is that
right? And we can help with the application itself also.
Right. Well, here's a good question that just came up. 1099 employees, contract employees, does this apply to them too? Part-time as well? Speak to us about that.
Yes, is the short answer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And just to point something out here, 1099 employee is to a CPA is an oxymoron. 1099 is an independent contractor, and employee gets a W-2. 1099 is the form that independent contractors get. Employees get W-2s. But there are lots of businesses that employ that work with people on a consistent basis that are really independent contractors. And they do fall under this. You can include them in your payroll. So okay. I hope that answered the question.
Sure. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start wrapping it up. Any other thoughts or comments or information that either of you want to share with our listeners?
I don't think so.
No, I think we're done. I would advise you though, when in doubt, make the application. And if you're having trouble, get with your a professional to help you apply for the right amount and set up a tracking system. And
can anybody, are you guys open? Can anybody, if you have questions, they need a CPA, they need advice through this process, they need to run paperwork, are you guys available for that?
Absolutely. We'd love to help if we can. And we haven't been tested, but I think we're healthy. We're not maintaining the 6 feet right here, but I think we're okay. We're working shifts in our office and trying to maintain the social distancing as best that we can, but we are open, yes.
Okay, great. Give us your contact information, website, emails, anything you want to give us so we know how to contact you.
Okay, the telephone is 225-383-2974. And I'll give you both of our emails. Mine is TMCKEY at mckeybusinessgroup.com, and Rebekah's is Summerville at mckeybusinessgroup.com. And our website is www.mckeybusinessgroup.com.
Tim, thank you. Rebekah, appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Maurice.
For your time doing this. Attendees, everybody, thank you for joining us. We're here signing out. Maurice Velasquez, Team Real World. Glad we could help you. Hopefully it helped. Bye-bye.